All right, let's talk about bread. I mean, it's this amazing thing that billions of people eat every single day. But have you ever really stopped to think about what's going on inside that loaf? It's this incredible mix of art and science. And that's what we're diving into today.
You know, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Most of the bread we know and love, it all starts from just a few super simple things. This slide says it all, really. From 4 simple ingredients, a world of flavor is born. So how do you get from a pile of flour to a perfect, crusty loaf? Well, that's the magic we're going to unpack.
Okay, so let's get right to the soul of it. At its very core, bread is just flour, water, and salt. But there's a fourth ingredient, a living element that literally breathes life into the whole thing. And that's where things get really interesting.
And here they are, the 4 pillars. You've got flour for the structure, water to bring it all together, and salt for flavor. But that last one, the leavening, that's the life of the party. This is where the baker has to make a huge decision that's going to define everything about the bread.
All right, let's break down these building blocks a little more. Because before we can even get into that big debate, yeast versus sourdough, we got to understand what each of these key ingredients is actually doing in the dough.
So, the unsung hero of bread is gluten. When you're kneading dough, you're not just mixing stuff up. No, you're actually building this incredible, stretchy network of proteins. Think of it like creating billions of tiny little balloons that are going to trap all the gas that gets produced. This network is what gives bread that amazing, airy, chewy texture. It's really what makes bread, well, bread.
But gluten can't do it all on its own. It's got a supporting cast. Water is what wakes everything up. It gets the leavening going and lets that gluten network actually form. Salt? It's way more than just flavor. It's like a traffic cop for the yeast, keeping it from going too fast. And sugar? Well, that's just a little snack for the yeast, and it's the secret to getting that perfect golden brown crust. Which brings us to the main event, the baker's choice. This is where the road splits. One path is ancient, wild, and a little unpredictable. The other is modern, precise, and built for speed. Yep, we're talking about the big showdown, sourdough starter versus industrial yeast.
So on one side, you've got sourdough starter, or levain. It's this living, breathing community of wild yeasts and bacteria that you literally capture from the flour and the air. It's complex. It gives you that incredible tangy flavor, but it takes patience. On the other side, industrial yeast. It's one single strain of yeast grown in a lab to be super reliable and fast. It's kind of like the difference between taming a wild animal and using a high-tech tool. And I mean it when I say a sourdough starter is alive. It's basically a pet you have to feed every day with more flour and water. And because the little microbes inside depend on the local environment, every starter on Earth is unique. That's why a sourdough from San Francisco tastes totally different than one from Paris. Each one has its own living history. Pretty cool, right?
Now, if you decide to go the commercial yeast route, you've still got options. There's regular active dry yeast, which you gotta wake up in some warm water. It works a little slower, which actually lets more flavor develop. Then you've got instant yeast, which is ready to go right out of the pocket. It's way faster, but you do lose out on a little bit of that flavor. And bread machine yeast, for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing as instant.
Okay, this slide is super useful for any baker out there. It's a handy little conversion chart for those times when a recipe calls for one type of yeast, but you only have another. But just keep in mind that trade-off we talked about. If you swap in a faster yeast like instant, your rising time is going to be shorter and the flavor will change just a bit. So we get the ingredients. Now let's talk about the actual process, that journey from a pile of flour to a beautiful finished loaf. It's funny. Whether you're using a wild starter or a packet of yeast, the main steps are pretty much the same. It's a dance that bakers have been perfecting for thousands of years.
And here are the 6 big stages. First, you mix everything into a shaggy mess. Then, you knead it to build up that gluten structure. The first fermentation, that's the long rest where all the flavor develops. After that, you shape it, let it rise one more time in a second fermentation, and finally, you bake it.
Okay, but how you know when you're done kneading? I mean, that's a huge question. Well, it's all about this one simple test. You just gently poke the dough with your finger. If the little dent slowly springs back, you're good to go. It means the gluten is strong and ready. The dough is alive and talking to you.
Now, about that first fermentation, the really important one for flavor, how long does it take? An hour? A whole day? This, right here, is where your choice of leavening makes the biggest difference in the entire process.
And the answer is, you watch the dough, not the clock. That's like the #1 rule of bread making. You wait until it has doubled in size. And this is a big but, the time it takes to get there is wildly different depending on what you're using. And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. If you're using commercial yeast, your dough will double in about 1 to 2 hours. Easy. But a sourdough, with its wild, leisurely microbes, you could be waiting 6 to 8 hours or even longer. See, yeast gives you speed, but that long, slow fermentation with sourdough, that's where all that deep, tangy, complex flavor is born. It's the ultimate trade-off.
So, if you're thinking, okay, I want to try that ancient method, how do you even start? Well, you have to create your own starter. It's this amazing process of capturing the wild yeasts that are floating around in the air and living on the grains of flour. You're literally building a tiny ecosystem from scratch.
It might sound complicated, but it's really not. You just mix some whole wheat flour and water and let it sit. After a couple of days, you start a routine. Throw some out and feed it with fresh flour and water. You just keep repeating that every day, and within about a week, you'll have this bubbly, active, living starter that's ready to make amazing bread.
So, after all that, we come back to the baker's choice. We're at the end of our journey, and it's time to decide. What do you value most? Speed and reliability, or craft and flavor?
And it really is that simple. If your goal is to have a delicious, reliable loaf of bread ready for dinner tonight, commercial yeast is your best friend. But if you're fascinated by the process, if you want to connect with an ancient craft and create the most complex flavor you possibly can, then starting a sourdough journey is one of the most rewarding things you can do. I think that's the real takeaway here. Bread isn't just a recipe with a list of ingredients. It's a partnership. You're working with a living thing, a fascinating biological process right in your own kitchen. You're helping to create something that's alive right up until the moment it goes into the oven.
So the only question left is, which path will you take? Because when you bake bread, you're not just making food, you're connecting with thousands of years of human history. So are you ready to start your own living history?